it has been a benefit for EXP to have gone through a pandemic, because people realize, hey, I didn't really need the office. That was kind of a distraction anyway.
Happened for me.
But you believed in that office, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went into the office 4 days a week, and then when the pandemic hit, I didn't. And I was like, you know what? I no longer am in the habit of doing it. I've created my own way, and it's actually more efficient. We're trying to compile the best things about what we have. So when the conversation of EXP comes up, what are some of the first things that get written down? What are the first questions that people ask about EXP?
What are the splits? Everybody always wants to know about money.
Split and cap, right?
Split and cap.
And
well, a lot of people don't understand cap.
Okay.
This is a problem.
Yeah.
They can't imagine that there's actually a cap on their commission.
Well, and so I joined Keller Williams in 2010, and there were 66,000 agents, smaller than where EXP is right now. And at that time, 2010, a capped commission structure,
unheard of.
It was not.
Did you have a cap at Remax?
No, I did not have a cap, and the way ours worked at Remax, I had a large desk fee every month that never went away, and then I still paid 5%. So I was on 95.5, but the 5% never capped, and then you pay another, several $1,000s a month in office fees. Then it was a whole lot more.
And at your production level, that not capping is going to equal a lot,
Exactly.
even at a 95.5, which sounds great.
Yeah.
So let's break this down for a second. I know from being at Keller Williams, the caps here locally, 20 to 25 grand, right?
I think that's
Depending
fair.
on which office you're with and what their fees are, is $20,000 to $25,000. So let's break that down. EXP nationally cap is $16,000.
That's right.
Okay, and then so once you cap, you continue to pay in at a tune of what, like 200 and something. What's that add up to?
$250.
So $250. So if I'm a capping agent, I've capped out. I'm not paying part of my commission now
100% commission.
to the cap, or paying down the company $1. But I do have a transaction fee of $250. That ends after how many? 20.
Well, not actually.
Okay.
That's a misunderstood thing too. It actually is a bucket that caps at $5,000.
Okay.
So in general, that should be about 20 deals, but you can sometimes be splitting that processing fee with another agent.
Okay.
And so sometimes it may end up being a couple extra deals.
So even if you add those two numbers together, we're still right about that 21 grand.
And that's for an agent doing well over 30 deals.
Right.
So that's not everybody.
Right, and some agents, they may fall short of the cap. They're still getting 80-20 on that split, right?
That's right.
80-20. However, let's talk about another thing. If we are talking with an agent who's doing 30, 40 deals a year, the opportunity of Icon comes up.
That's the game changer.
And that's something like I'm likely going to be eligible for that very soon, in just it's the 6 months that I've been here. Tell me about the Icon. So how would you explain that to me?
So the Icon is the production award at EXP. We have one, and it's Icon.
Okay.
And Icon basically says when you hit your $16,000 commission cap, and you go on to fill that $5,000 bucket with processing fees, so approximately 20 more deals, then you earn the Icon award, and you're eligible for it. When you earn that, you have the ability to earn $16,000 in company stock.
Okay.
$16,000.
So I paid that as I went.
Yeah.
Through each deal, and if I reach this production, I'm eligible to receive that back.
Correct.
$16,000 in company stock.
Right.
That I get to hold on to, watch it grow.
That's
and
right.
Use it later, right?
There's a small give back component to that, which says in exchange for this stock, I'm going to either teach, mentor, or sit on a committee.
Okay.
Which I think is a brilliant idea, because guess what that does for our training?
Yeah, I mean, you've got top agents training the company, which is a beautiful thing.
Yep.
So just out of curiosity, those obligations of mentoring, training, or sitting on a committee, break that down for me. How many hours a month am I going to have into something like that?
It depends on which one you choose. I chose to teach, and
Okay.
you teach 6 classes in a year for 1 hour.
So for 6 hours a year, I could teach.
And get your $16,000.
That's not bad. I
No.
do that anyway. Okay.
Right,
And
right.
keep in mind too, you get $8,000 of it back immediately. As soon as
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So 8K.
Immediately that hits your stock.
Yeah. There are a lot of details about the ICON program that we would want to dive into if somebody was
Right.
thinking about it. So in all, and I know we've achieved it, you're absolutely on track to achieve it. It's a very exciting award.
Okay.
It's better than any statue I've ever received
Right.
anywhere
Well,
in this business.
So our local Association of Realtors in Cincinnati, you don't get that award until you pay them $85.
Correct.
And they don't give you $16,000 back.
No, they give
get-
you a statue.
And a dry chicken lunch.
That's right. That's it.
Okay,
That's
so
it.
so
Yeah.
that conversation usually, at least the split and the cap conversation usually happens first.
Yeah.
And most local, and you guys are you're very familiar with all the brokerages in town, most local brokerages don't even have a cap. They're starting to, because it's now the conversation in order to retain agents, they're starting to have a cap.
I want to say this. Tell me if this is crazy. I actually can't imagine being an agent at a brokerage where there wasn't a cap.
Oh man.
I
you're
don't
just
understand.
Paying in indefinitely.
Well, unless you just didn't understand that you could be somewhere with a cap.
That's it. I mean, if you do basic math on that, and you do any level of business, there's just no way that doesn't work out for you.
And to shine a light on that, I've only ever been at companies with a cap.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have friends at companies without a cap, and it seems to me like two things are happening. Number one, their head is down because they're working so hard just to make the money. They have to work hard to keep the
Harder.
50% that they get to keep.
Mm-hmm.
Their head's down. They're not looking up as a business owner. Nobody's ever coached them as a business owner to look up and say, what else is out there?
Right.
The other thing that's happening is that the leadership at some of those companies, they know that they're taking a big chunk, so they create a narrative that causes those agents not to look up or creates a false narrative about what's actually out there.
And they do a really good job.
It's convincing.
Because
Yeah.
look at how many agents are still at these brokerages giving
Yeah.
them 40 and 30% and sometimes 50%. That's insane. If you are at a brokerage where you're giving them 40% of every check, in order to keep $100,000, I mean, you're having to make, I don't know what that is.
It's a lot.
$180,000?
Yeah.
And at EXP, in order to make $100,000, you're making 116. That's a lot fewer houses to sell and a lot less work.
So the
your
question is, for anybody who's kind of listening to us, everybody's heard work smarter, not harder. Why aren't people doing it?
I don't think they know the difference.
I think education is a big piece.
Education's a big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, even for myself, I didn't know the difference
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't searching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and until one day you look up and start looking around, you're like, oh my gosh. And that's what happened to you, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I had no idea.
Right.
I'd always heard these things, but I'd never looked into it, right?
I think it's that, but I also think it's comfort level. Some people see it and they don't
Comfort.
want to see it because they like their office, they know their manager answers their phone, they know how the copier works, they know how to turn in paperwork, and people are afraid of change, period. That's
Yeah.
just like a human nature thing.
Victims
So-
of habit.
That's right. So they would rather fight for their comfortable lack of income than to get uncomfortable and explore what it looks like to earn more.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt that first conversation is what's the split, what's the cap, how much, what are the ins and outs of my daily life look like? What are some other questions that we get when people start asking us about EXP?
Where am I going to work?
Okay.
Where am I going to go?
Okay. So,
I hear
Is
there's
there
no
an
office.
Yeah.
okay. So how do we frame that conversation up? I mean, what do we tell them?
Where do you work now? I mean, most people are
Yeah.
working from home now.
We have
So-
to understand what their habits are.
Yeah, I mean, and I think with this pandemic that we're crawling out of right now, the 2-year span that we spent working from home, not able to go into our real estate offices, a lot of people did look up, and they said, well, if I'm going to be working from home and I don't need my office, then I've got my office set up, and people have adapted pretty well.
It has been a benefit for EXP to have gone through a pandemic because people realize, hey, I didn't really need the office. That was kind of a distraction anyway.
Happened for me.
Like, But you believed in that office, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
big
went
time.
into the office 4 days a week, and then when the pandemic hit, I didn't. And I was like, you know what? I no longer am in the habit of doing it. I've created my own way, and it's actually more efficient. You know.
Well, the thing I'd really say to people is that we do have offices.
Yeah, we do.
EXP has a international agreement with a company called Regis that manages offices everywhere, and in just about every city you have access to office space. Common space, all the tools there. If you need closed door or conference room, you have a discounted deal there. So also, because you're keeping more of your own money, go get your own office. Something that works for you, close to your home. It's convenient.
Yes.
You can allocate your funds inside of your business in a way that works for you, not just the way this brokerage set up their office.
Well, and you know, if we look at how the three of us are set up, you've got your own office space, you've got room for training, meeting, all that. We've got our own office space here with podcast studio. We've got our own team office. We've got common space. We have the training room downstairs could seat 50 people. So we have landing spots all over the place. Well, when you have a brokerage, you have one space, and everybody comes to that one space. Well, here we can float around, and we can go to other Icon agents or other people's offices and get to network well with our peers.
100%.
Right? So
You had a breakfast event here not too long ago. You had a lunch at your clubhouse facility attached with your office. I have a little office that is 3 minutes out of my door. It's nothing special. Cost me $500 a month. It's 2 little offices that we share, and that's all I need.
And it's
I
all
just
yours.
need to get out of the house,
And
and it's all
That's
mine.
all yours,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
And
go
then
in
we're
there,
doing the pop-up offices, which is really cool.
and then
for
we are
networking.
doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are you doing
so,
with pop-up?
well, that was your idea, right?
Yeah, I think
It
because
was
people
great.
wanted to sit around a table with people.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
get to know people, and not just in your own area, because we're really Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky,
Yep.
Indiana, and it gives us all a chance to kind of network together, get to know each other, and pass business back and forth.
Well, and that speaks to our culture at EXP. A lot of other companies talk about culture, and it may be misunderstood because when you come to EXP, it's like, well, there's no office for everybody to go and hang out around the copier or gossip around the water cooler. And what we do when we get together is very productive. Like, 2 weeks ago we got together and we shared ideas on how to better each other as agents, how to interact better in the market, how to solve problems. And honestly, I don't know if I've ever been at an office meeting at a previous brokerage where that much productivity happened.
Absolutely, 1000%, I agree. That
Agreed.
was a fabulous, and we're going to do it quarterly.
We're going to do it quarterly.
But
Yeah.
the sharing that went on with that room, and sitting there in that room, looking around the table at all the agents that were in there, it was amazing, the minds that were in that room. And I was so grateful to be a part of it. And you feel like, well, this is my tribe, and this is what I've been searching for that I've never had before. And I was very humbled that day.
I was too.
Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing too, is that when I came over to EXP back in 2017, I was the first agent in Northern Kentucky to open up the MLS. Right? I called the MLS and got the account set up. And they were like, what is this EXP
XP
thing?
what?
EXP thing. I was like, I get it, just go with it,
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. I didn't have peers at that time to look up to. And when we get together as EXP agents, I'm proud to be in the room. Like, it is, like, I felt
Absolutely.
so good thinking, okay, I felt like small fish, big pond. I was like, I got room to grow here.
Which is how I want to feel.
Yeah.
I don't want to be
And that may
the best
be,
agent in the office.
that may be one thing holding some people back from even asking the question, is that they're the big dog in the office.
100%.
And everybody looks up to them, and okay, yeah, you're the biggest fish in the pond. How do you grow? If you've got everybody else looking up to you, how do you raise your level when everybody else around you is looking up to you? So
You've got to make that effort. If it's not in your office, you at least have to go look for that, because if you are letting your ego keep you in place because you like being on top, that's just going to be temporary, because somebody's going to pass you up.
Well, and keep in mind too, that's not the culture in most offices.
Yeah.
It's
true.
it's really not.
No,
It's-
sharing
it's
and
more
transparency.
Of a competitive nature.
Yeah.
and that culture in most offices is, I'm not going to share with you, because if you take what I'm giving you, it may impact me.
Correct.
And when
Yeah.
we were in the room last week, it's like everybody's just dumping it on the table
I
because it's just
know.
rising
Full
tide raises
And you did a
all
great
ships.
job facilitating that because you get that many
I know.
agents in a room with that much. That's a lot of words to say.
Yes.
Words and
That's
ego
so
and
true.
all that stuff.
But I appreciated, excuse me, I think it was, excuse me, Wendy Sheets
Yeah.
Yeah.
really was very vulnerable and transparent about what she had seen from another agent that she was then kind of embracing. And I think we all took that. I was like, okay, lay that against my business. What does that look like for me? Whether I decide that that's something that's good and I want to work with that, or I laid it against my business and that doesn't apply to me, that's valuable to be able to have that assessment of your business and how you're behaving in your business. And the only way that happens is when you're sitting in a room with 15, 20 other agents doing at least what you're doing or better.
Yep.
That's when growth happens, I think.
So, the financials usually come up. That's the
Yep.
tip of the iceberg.
Yep.
And then they're like, okay, well, EXP is a cloud-based brokerage. Where am I going to sit and do my work? Well, where have you been sitting and doing your work the last 2 years
Right.
at home? And it's like, okay. So that's part of it. After the office conversation, after the numbers conversation, what are people curious about that they want to know more about?
Probably training.
Okay.
Training.
Yeah.
100%.
How am I going to grow?
Yeah.
Yep.
How are you going to grow?
So training, and that's something we'll talk about in the podcast room. Yeah, when we do training, you've got access to masterminds nationally, people who are training at a high level, icon agents.
There's 80 hours worth of EXP University training every week.
Every single week. I just looked today,
Mhm.
on the day we're talking about this. There were, I think, over 12 hours of icon series training today.
12 hours a day.
Today.
Mhm.
You might not get that in another brokerage in a year.
Absolutely.
And what the Icon series is are Icon agents bringing their best practices and being completely transparent and sharing them with others around the country. And by the way, you don't have to pay to go to a big convention to get this information, which is usually where that information is dispensed, right?
Yeah.
Panels, and you got to buy a hotel and a airfare and admission. This is in your kitchen in your PJs with your coffee, very conveniently for most.
Yeah.
It just really is accessible for all agents here at EXP, I think.
And I would say people who are entrepreneurial, who immerse themselves in reading, in podcasts, and that sort of thing, would fit very well into this model
Yes.
because they can absorb this information very easily from wherever they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like when you have these icon agents from around the country, somebody does something in, Colorado with an open house or with a marketing strategy, and they're like, oh my gosh, nobody's doing that here.
Mm-hmm.
I can try that here in Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati.
Yep.
And it's like nobody locally is even doing that. I could be kind of the tip of the spear on this type of marketing, right?
Yeah.
So that's huge.
Agreed.
So we've got training on the board. Anything else? Big question is, I would say, there's a lot of, I don't know, what would you call it? Noise about how we have a revenue share system, and we have things that other companies don't have.
Like
right?
stock shares.
You have
and
the
revenue
equity
share.
program where a piece of every dollar that you make can go into purchasing stock at a discount, so you can
Mhm.
set yourself up for future savings.
Mhm.
The revenue share, which I think is highly misunderstood.
I think there's a lot of misinformation about that.
Probably the most
Yeah.
misinformation about that.
Yeah, and we'll clear some of that up in the
Yeah.
podcast room.
Yeah.
So revenue share is something that we would put under the delayed gratification category,
Mhm.
and then the equity program and stock. The immediate gratification is the split, the cap, the culture, education,
Education.
training.
I think culture is a word we didn't actually mention when we were talking about this,
Yeah.
that people wonder about. So if I don't have, they think the culture exists inside of four walls,
Right.
and I would just challenge that. That's
Absolutely.
not what culture is.
That's not culture.
No,
It's-
that's not culture.
that's
Culture is
just,
everything outside of those
Yeah.
four walls, really, right?
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much good information that gets shared here.
Yeah.
And people aren't even thinking about what that's going to cost them. They're thinking, I'm just going to pour into everybody because I'm getting the same thing back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing about our culture here. All right. That's kind of the majority of it. There's a lot of nitty gritty once you get down into the details.
Okay.
But anything else we want to add to that people may have questions about, or questions that we've gotten?
What about objections around these things? Should we talk about that now or in the podcast, or do you think that's important to
Anything top of mind on
address?
this stuff as far as objections?
I think when we talk about the office, that's generally an objection, and so we've talked about the solution to that, but how do you help agents see that the office is a place to hide in some ways
So
versus...
Yeah.
here's my concept, right? So here at our office, this is a shared workspace.
Yep.
I reached out to an influencer who I was connected with. We weren't super tight, but he had mentioned in kind of within earshot that he was buying a commercial space and he was doing a shared workspace with it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, that sounds cool. I could probably use some office space. So the concept to me was, okay, shared office space. There's going to be insurance agents here.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a mortgage broker here.
Mm-hmm.
There's B&I meetings that meet downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were 70 people here this morning, and every single one of those people are not selling real estate.
Right. They own homes.
They own
It
homes.
doesn't even matter what their
Right.
job is.
Well,
They're
right.
homeowners.
They own homes. They have their own networks.
Yeah.
They know people.
They know people.
You're right.
When I walk into a real estate office, there is a 100% chance that I am not walking out of that office with a client.
Correct. Because nobody there's buying from you.
And when I walk
Yeah.
in here, I'm having conversations with an insurance agent about how I just helped a client. We just got through an ugly appraisal situation, and we have conversation about that. How does that work back and forth? 2 weeks later, hey, my wife's brother needs to buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
That's not happening at a real estate brokerage where I'm surrounded by 100 other real estate agents, but it's happening when you position yourself in an area, in an office, or in a place where you're networking with people who have the ability to refer you business.
And let alone just going to Starbucks and setting up your laptop and working there for a while and starting conversation with the person next to you.
The entrepreneurial spirit at EXP is head and shoulders above the entrepreneurial spirit at any other brokerage.
Agreed.
Because it allows you to go out there and create, and it doesn't try to like just wrap its arms around you and keep
Correct.
you to the brokerage. So many.
Yeah, that's completely true.
Mhm.
And I've never had the broker at EXP call me and be like, hey, I heard you were talking to this other real estate brokerage or this other office. Is everything okay?
Right.
But that's the scarcity mindset of a lot of traditional brokers. If they see you having lunch with someone from another company, they're automatically like,
Right.
they're
At EXP, it's like, awesome.
Yeah.
What'd you learn from them?
Yeah.
What's going on there?
yeah.
You know what? It just struck me. I've never actually verbalized this and never thought of this, but think about the top agents. I can only say from KW, which is where my background is. When they get to a certain level, what do? They go get a mega office.
Yeah.
They go outside of the office and hang a sign on their own space. Why?
They've grown.
Yeah.
They're entrepreneurial.
Right?
They
Nobody's
have,
buying a house inside that office for them.
well, and
They need their own brand.
here's the
all of it.
exciting thing for me. I bet you, when you guys got your real estate license, you probably had these aspirations and dreams of, I'm going to open my own brokerage one
I
day.
think everybody
I've heard that
at
so
some
much.
point.
I still hear it.
And then somewhere around between month 6 and month 18, you're like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
No.
Yeah.
So if you do have that entrepreneurial spirit that every agent got started with, EXP is the next best option because you don't have to deal with the brokerage operations, the overhead, all that. You get to remain in your entrepreneurial lane and do what you've always wanted to do without all the hassle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, another thing too along those lines is, people, especially years ago, 15 years ago when you got into the business, it was about what brand are you going to join?
Mm-hmm.
Because they felt like the brand was what was going to make them
Mattered.
successful. And back then, maybe it did matter. I mean, I was a true believer in RE/MAX and still think it's a fabulous company. But you really believe that RE/MAX was making you successful, when in reality, it doesn't matter to the consumer what your brand is, because they're doing business with you. And I found that out very, very quickly when we came over and started making phone calls to clients to let them know we made the move. And no one cared.
Right.
They were like, well, we do business with you.
That's
so
right.
I think that's a huge
Oh, so
myth
true.
out there too.
And
Yeah.
that's one thing that over the last, I would say mainly over the last 10 years, but yes, over the last 20 years that has changed so much is the how much the brand matters. And now with social media being prominent, with so much training happening, agents are doing such a good job of marketing themselves. They don't need to pay a broker 50% or $1,200 a month to put a billboard and bus ads and stuff like that out. They get to market themselves on behalf of the broker.
Yeah.
Right.
If your brokerage is spending money promoting their own brand, you have a problem because you're paying for that. And that's not actually helping you.
So true.
Not helping you. So I would look at that. And that's one thing when KW hit the marketplace, before there was KW, they really pushed that. You will never see an ad for Keller Williams. We are behind you. And that's when that changed.
Change the story.
That changed. And that is even more true now as things begin to blossom out of KW, which is EXP, the next version of that. No longer do you stand behind your brand, your brokerage brand. And if you are, I challenge you to relook at that. Really open your mind.